And so goal setting is really important because we can have this information, but we need to figure out what is our destination. But I'm going to give you some tools today to help you figure out for yourself what that destination is and setting goals on how you're going to get there. So some things to know about goal setting. So first of all, setting goals is really helpful because what setting goals does is it triggers new behaviors. So it helps to guide your focus and helps you to sustain some momentum in moving toward that goal. If we have a really far off goal, it's really hard to kind of get there unless we really make it tangible. And that's what we're going to be learning about tonight. Goals also help you to align your focus. So making sure you're focused on goals that are aligned with the authentic you and the you that you see yourself as being, the ideal self that you want to be. So making sure that your goals match that. And as you begin to get more focused, it also promotes a sense of mastery. And that is part of having meaning and purpose, is that we have a sense of mastery over something. Goals also help motivate us to develop strategies that will enable us to perform a required goal level. So whatever your goal level is, it's going to give you that motivation to develop strategies on how to get there. Accomplishing a goal has us feeling satisfied. It gets us more motivated. But on the flip side, and this is where we need to be careful about what type of goal we're setting, is goals can also lead to frustration, and it can lower our motivation if we don't accomplish it. So it's really important that your goals be attainable and realistic. Goals, it's a process that can change over time, and especially some of those longer term and lifelong goals that we'll talk about in a minute. With the types of goals that you would have set for yourself in your 20s is much different than the goal that someone in their 40s or 50s or 60s might set for themselves. So just recognizing that goals will change. Whatever age you are, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's about continuing to revisit those goals over and over and making sure that those goals are still in line with where we are in our life and with who we are. Because just like goals, we are constantly evolving and changing through our life cycle. As we learn more, as we experience more, we change through that process. And so sometimes we have to go back and we have to change our goals to match that. And so I want to talk for a minute about the 5 proven ways that goal setting is effective. Edward Locke and Gary Latham, they're really leaders in the goal setting theory. They're kind of the creators of the theory, or the leaders in the theory. And their research has shown us that goal setting can be very effective. They tell us that working toward a goal is a major source of motivation, and that in turn improves our performance. If we have a good goal, it becomes our motivation, and then we perform better. And according to Locke's research, he says 90% of the time, goals that were specific and challenging, but not overly challenging, we don't want to go too challenging, they led to higher performance when you compare those to really easy goals or goals that were too general, such as a goal to do your best. If I say my goal is just to do my best, that's a really general goal, and it doesn't really tell us very much about what you're trying to do. And there's no way to really know whether you're mastering that or not if you're just saying you're doing your best, because then what is your best? So they also state that there are 5 goal setting principles that can help improve your chance of success. So the first one is clarity. Clarity is setting goals that are clear and specific. Challenge. It has to be a challenging goal because we want to stretch our minds and we want us to think bigger. We think bigger when we're challenged. And that will help you to accomplish more. And every success you achieve helps you to build kind of a winning mindset, or a mindset of saying, I can. One of the biggest reasons people say I can't is because they haven't really tried. And so this is where having some challenge, and it's not so challenging that it's unattainable, but it's a challenge enough that it keeps us motivated towards that goal. Commitment is the next point that's really important here, because if you're not committed to your goals with everything that you have, it's far less likely that you're going to achieve it. And so goal setting is super important. You have to be committed, and it has to be your goal. If you're trying to complete goals that have been created by somebody else, it's less likely that you're going to be as motivated about it than you would be if you were setting it for yourself. Getting feedback, that also helps us to know what we're doing right, and how we're doing. And allows us to adjust our expectations and your plan of action going forward. So, you know, if you've made a goal that other people can observe, getting feedback from them is really helpful. Then we have task complexity. And that's the final point that I'm going to talk about in this section here, is it's important to set goals that are aligned with the goal complexity. So if it's a really complex goal, you're going to need complex tasks to complete the goal. And so just making sure that those are balanced. We don't want to have a complex goal and then oversimplified kind of tasks to complete, because it's not really going to work. We need to make sure that those two things are in balance. Now there's different types of goals in terms of categories of goals. We have lifetime goals, and these are those big goals. Those are the ones that kind of really set us on the trajectory of where we're going long term for the rest of our life. And they can really take anywhere from a year to an entire lifetime to accomplish. They're those really big goals, and they are the ones that kind of span throughout our lifetime. Then we have long-term goals. Now, these are what some people might call your workhorse goals. And they need to have a specific time limit. And they can be 5-year goals, they can be 10-year goals, but those are bigger goals. They're not necessarily as big as your life goal, but it's definitely a bigger goal. And then there's short-term goals. Now, short-term goals are not always super short. For some people, they might be a month, they might be 6 months, they might be a year. But really what these are the stepping stone goals that help us to get to the bigger goals. That's the purpose of a short-term goal. Is our short-term goal is like the step that we need to take in order to get towards our bigger goal. So sometimes we might have 2 or 3 or 10 different goals that are all related to our long-term goal, and those are our short-term goals. And then we have even smaller goals that we call the stepping stone goals. And those are the goals that allow you to reach the bigger goals. Again, like the short-term goals. So think of them like the short-term goals, the stepping stone goals are building the short-term goals. And the short-term goals are building the long-term and lifetime goals. So it's like now you've got your short-term goals. Now you need to break those down into smaller goals as well. And so we're going to go through the outline of what SMART stands for. And this can be used in this very same format, whether you're looking at personal goals, whether you're looking at professional goals. And so in order for a SMART goal to be effective, it's really important for us to really understand what each of these points means. So the first point is specific. That's what the S stands for in SMART. So our goals have to be specific. And I mentioned this really briefly. It's really important that we be able to specifically say what our goal is, as specific as we can possibly get with it. It's going to help you have a clear vision of exactly what it is you want to accomplish, and having a clear picture of your goal is going to help you also create realistic checkpoints to keep yourself on track. So, for example, of how you can take a goal and rework it to be more specific. If somebody had a goal, say, for example, around weight loss, someone might say, I want to lose 25 pounds, but that in itself is actually very vague. And so to make it more specific, you might say, I'm going to work on losing 25 pounds by cutting refined sugar from my diet and exercise for 30 minutes, 3 days a week. So the M in SMART stands for measurable. So we have to be able to measure our goals, or you won't know how close you are to attaining it. How do you know when you've reached your goal? You set checkpoints. And now checkpoints are like miniature goals that are going to help you reach your main goal. So for example, if you had a goal of making money, that could be made measurable by setting a series of mini goals to help you stay on track towards that main goal. Keeping a goal measurable is going to help you to stay on track towards your bigger goal. And reaching those mini goals along the way help you to stay motivated as you can witness your own progress. The A stands for attainable. It is really important that we set goals for ourselves that we can actually attain. So unrealistic goals are only going to discourage us because they're not attainable. And if it's an unattainable goal, and you try to work towards it and you can never reach it, it kind of gets to the point eventually where it's what's the point? So for example, an unattainable goal would be if you say that you want to do something perfectly, or if it's way too out of reach for us, where sometimes those goals might be attainable if we've already done some smaller goals first to get us towards that. But if you just set this great big goal out there and it's not realistic for you to achieve, chances are you'll get discouraged and you'll give up on it. So it's really important to remember that. So that means asking yourself, do you have enough time to complete this goal? Making sure you have the resources to complete the goal. So, do you have the resources like money, supplies, education, outside help? What resources do you need to obtain that goal? And do you have enough of those resources to get there? And right now, when we're setting goals for right now, we need to think about what is going on around us right now. And there are some goals that are absolutely attainable, even in the midst of the isolation. And there's some goals that simply are not, because of the resources are not available to us right now in this moment. But thinking about some of those long-term goals, we may not have the resources right now, but we know we're going to have them again at some point in the future. So maybe there's some smaller steps in preparing us so that when all of this is over, we're then able to really pursue that other goal. Next is relevant. A SMART goal needs to be relevant. A goal has to hold meaning in your life if you want it to be attainable, if you want it to be relevant. So what is meaningful for you? Whether it's a personal goal or a business goal, setting relevant, meaningful goals are going to give you motivation that you need to actually focus on it and actually do it. The T stands for timely. So timely means breaking down a goal, making deadlines that are going to keep you focused. So again, there's some of those points along the way that we need to make sure that we're putting into place. So when you're creating a timeline for your goal, make sure you take into account how much each task is going to take. So we have different tasks that we need to do. We need to be realistic on what the timeline is going to be to get those tasks done. So give yourself time to follow through, but not too much time, because if you give yourself too much time, that can often lead to distractions and time wasting. I would really encourage you, if there's a couple of areas in your life you want to work on over the next little while, do a couple of goals, do 2 or 3. Don't overwhelm yourself. Make sure you keep things relatively simple as well. This isolation, it is really hard on everyone. So make sure that you're setting goals for yourself that are positive and they're realistic. Because the more that you do these realistic goals, the better you're going to feel about yourself, the more excited you'll be about life again, the more you're going to be thriving and growing.